What's happening? What's happening? This is the Sports Counterpoints podcast. I'm GB. I'm with Brian and Coop. What's up, guys?
Another day.
Yeah, man.
I got it. Always good being on the call with y'all, doing our weekly sports show. Something we've been doing for like 5 years now. We'll be year 6 coming up in about a couple weeks. It's December the 12th, 2023. We'll be talking about Show Me the Money Otani. We'll be talking about the NFL playoff, some implications and scenarios that we think might occur. We'll talk about the NFL last week and what we got coming up this week. And also the NBA in-season tournament is over. And a little, just in case you needed a little spoiler, Lakers win. So if you're not watching, I'm holding up a Laker hoodie I have on. But yeah, so let's talk about it, man. So starting with Shohei Otani, $700 million for 10 years, which actually is $20 million for 10 years and $680 million in year 11, or however they defer it. But what does that mean for the Dodgers? What does that mean for, team? What do you think?
So I've actually been looking into this a whole lot, because when we first saw the news, everyone just was talking about the $700 million and $70 million per, and that was crazy. But then for all the people who know who Bobby Bonilla Day is, when the deferral of this came out, that even made this way more interesting. So I'm going to spout off a couple of interesting things that kind of worked out there. So Otani agreed to take just $2 million of salary per year over the first 10 years of the contract. And then after that, he gets paid $68 million per year. So for the Dodgers, this means that they're going to save a truck ton of money on luxury taxes, because the average value will only be $46 million over that period. And that's a lot less than the $70 million, which would have caused them to pay a lot of luxury taxes. More importantly, Shohei just did this team a huge favor, because they basically are not spending any money next year on the top talent available.
That's crazy.
So they can go after all of these other top pitching prospects. There's 2 other dudes from Japan who are supposed to be lights out good. They've already had a bunch of hitting. They really needed to shore up their pitching, and Shohei just did them the biggest favor. Now, of course, he did that because he wants to be able to play for a team that's going to compete for championships for the next 10 years. But the genius of this is that let's just say he only plays for those 10 years. So he plays the rest of his career there and he decides to go off in the sunset. Maybe he plays 1 or 2 more years. He can establish residency he won't pay if he were to retire, he can establish residency in Las Vegas and Texas and Miami or whatever. And then on that money, because he's not traveling to everyone, he's not getting hit by the athlete taxes, he can get all of that money virtually state tax free, right? So there's already some savings there. Plus he's making over $50 million a year in endorsements, which is only going to go up when he goes from the Angels, who suck, to the Dodgers, who are good. So it's not like the guy was trying to find opportunities to make more money. He's got plenty of money, and he's now just secured the bag forever, right? For the next 20 years, even after he's retired and there's no endorsement money, he's still making $68 million a year. Bobby Bonilla Day is going to soon to be called Shohei Otani Day, because his $1 million a year, which was brilliant before, is paled by comparison. For Otani, this, I have to believe, and Jason, I want your opinion on this. I have to believe that other teams are going to be pissed about this and go to the commissioner and say, wait a minute, we've got to make it so these deals are not viable. So this is done, right? So this is going to happen. But if teams like the Dodgers, the Yankees, the Mets, with infinite money can figure out how to negotiate these deals where they can defer that, because $68 million a year, 10 years from now, might be a normal contract. I mean, if you look at the way contracts go up, it's crazy money right now, but it might be a blip in the window down the line. So, but anyways, that's kind of how the whole contract broke out. And as the news kind of split, I was looking at The Athletic, which had a really great breakdown of all the repercussions of that. Jason, with all that information, what were you thinking?
Yeah, you did a good synopsis for everybody on that contract. I just looked up the details before this podcast about that contract and saw the 10 years, $2 million. And the first thing that came to my mind was he's going to save a whole lot in state taxes in California, because they are high. So he won't have to pay that much. And you made a good point. He can establish residency in Texas or Nevada or somebody don't pay state taxes. Well, right, just register, yeah, or Oregon or something, and Hawaii, whatever, and you're good. You don't have to pay state taxes
Hawaii.
to get all that money. Well, yeah, Hawaii's expensive. Yeah, you got that right. But I was also thinking the same thing along the same lines as you. If teams like that have deep pockets can do this and see like this is actually possible and acquire somebody. I mean, it's already haves and have-nots in baseball already. This can just be this can be like college football. You know what I'm saying? Where it's really the haves against the have-nots, and all the people are going to get shut out of trying to even compete to get these star players. So I'm thinking if this happens again, Brian, I think it'll be okay now, and I think people will complain. But if it happens again, say the Yankees do it, because a lot of people don't like the Yankees, I really think they're going to try to do something to try to prevent this from happening again.
I think the Mets are going to copycat this with the other Japanese superstar immediately.
Yeah.
Because the owner of the Mets has basically said, I want him and I don't want to be outbid. So go and do whatever. So I think that this deal will be the blueprint for this summer. And I think the rest of the teams are going to try and shut it down
Right.
After this free agency period.
Now, I don't think it'll be because of the Mets, because the Mets suck and they always get players and then
richest team in baseball, though.
Yeah, right. They are the richest team in baseball, but they don't really do anything. I think if it was the Yankees, Brian, I think that's when people will try to put their foot down. I think the Mets, nobody will care. But let's just say these teams have some World Series appearances. Let's just say they go back to back. They're going to point back to these deals and how they loaded up their roster on how they, got to the World Series back to back years, and boom, it can explode. Then everybody will be pissed off. But I'm actually interested to see. I'm not a Dodger hater. I know a lot of Giants fans hate the Dodgers. I'm not a Giants fan, so I really don't care what they think. But I actually like watching the Dodgers play. And when the Dodgers win, it's like I'm not mad. Yeah, I'm not mad or very happy or whatever. But I mean, I think it's good that Dodgers win. LA. But I'm very interested to watch the Dodgers now because I wasn't before. I didn't watch any Dodger games last year, but I know I will this year, especially after me and Glenn saw Otani in person.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yep.
Yeah, you guys have to see him opening day. His one loss, like really for a little bit period, right?
Yeah. Well, no, I think he didn't lose. The bullpen lost that. He left with a 2-0 lead, and then bullpen messed it up. But
no, I do think it's going to be the Mets because the Mets have like FU money when it comes to being able to buy. Now, it's not a matter whether teams are good or bad. I'm saying that the free agency. So I'm gonna butcher his name. Yoshinobu Yamamoto.
Yeah, you butchered it. No, I'm just playing. I can't pronounce it.
Yoshinobu Yamamoto. This kid is supposed to be Shohei before Shohei. Like he's supposed to be that good. Has a 100-mile-per-hour fastball, and already wants superstar money. So the unique thing that happened with Shohei is that he was declared before he was supposed to. So he had to play his first couple of years on minimums. Making minimum amount of money, but he just really wanted to get into the league, and it's worked out for him. So he couldn't make these big contracts in the first one. For Yoshinobu, he can. And like I said, the Mets have basically made it clear that they won't be outbid. And so I think that for this free agency period, the Dodgers have established a new blueprint. There's another guy named Shota Amanaga. Sorry, I'm trying.
Yeah.
Who's supposed to be better than Shohei, who has asked to be released so that he can go in now, but he's too young. Okay. And so he has to play at he's 20, he's 2021. But if you're not 23, you have to play for minimums or something like that. So you have to play for minimums. I'm just reading up after on the free agency period because I find this really kind of fascinating. He wouldn't be able to do it. And so the thought is that before he's able to sign these crazy money contracts, they're going to close that loophole. And so you're really only going to have 2 or 3 players. There's a guy named Jordan Montgomery, but he's not expected to get $500+ million, right?
Jordan Montgomery, is he a pitcher from Texas or something? Jordan Montgomery?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yoshinobu is supposed to get a Shohei light deal, 400. It's like long 10-year mega millions of dollars kind of thing. Right. And I would think the Yankees will be leading the charge to close that because they've got tons and tons of money in the book and it's on every single year. But it'll be really interesting. I do think that this is going to be when they all get together in March in Arizona to talk about rules and all that kind of stuff. I guarantee you there's going to be a whole lot of teams on one side of that conversation.
Yeah, real talk.
It's gonna be crazy, man. That money is
But
insane.
you know what? The money. So I first heard about this contract. I was in the car and just scrolling on my phone, and that's when I text you guys. I said, "Man, you could give everybody." I was just so discombobulated that number was just. I've never thought I'll see a number, at least not this soon in my life. There'll be $700 million contract.
That's Jon Rahm money.
That's live golf money. Yeah, for sure.
I got all my numbers. You Brian, your math is wrong. I'm like, no, it's not. And I said it again, and July's like, your math is wrong. I'm like, oh yeah, you know what? You damn. I was at a stoplight. I was like, oh, you damn sure.
I was nice. I said it. I only said it once. So I was like, well, you might want to look at this one more time.
Right. Yeah, I couldn't believe it.
You mentioned Jon Rahm, B. We never really talked about that. Jon Rahm.
Yeah, real quickly, he moved over to Live Golf. He signed a $600 million deal.
I thought it was 450 in the end. Is it 600?
It's 600 is what I saw. But the interesting part will be whether or not it is. So the Live, not the Live Golf. Live Golf has nothing to do with this. The PIF, which owns Live Golf, and the PGA have a negotiation period which goes to the end of the year. And all of the people on the PGA side said it will stop at the end of the year. So if they don't work a deal, all things are back off, all suits are back on. The world goes as if nothing happened. But if they do work out a deal, and that deal includes the end of Live Golf after a season or something like that, then Rahm gets whatever he got, whatever front money he got. But again, it's a rounding error. When the PIF has something like 200 and some odd $1 billion to work with across. Yeah. What is the PIF fund?
I think Rahm I keep seeing 450 up to 600, depending on bonuses. And then apparently Tony Finau may go too for 85.
May I correct myself? It was 200 billion a few years ago when we started talking about it. It is currently at $776 billion in the entire fund. So $600 million to watch Jon Rahm play golf is nothing. And the thing about the PIF, which is so frustrating, is that they have so much money that they are paying. No one's watching Live. No one cares. Right. No one watches the games. No one follows them. This is basically like the three of us deciding that we've got so much money, we're just going to watch the Lakers play in the backyard for 3-on-3.
Right.
All of we've got so much money. We're just going to pay all of them stupid amounts of money because we want to watch them. We don't care if anyone else does. We don't need to make a profit. We don't need to be to be on the plus side. And so that's what they're doing. So I'm disappointed because Rahm has always been one of those strong, I'm going to stay in the PGA guy. It wasn't 3 days before when the speculation came out that Rory came out and said, there's no way Rahm's doing it. I've talked to him recently. He's as much a PGA guy as me or anybody else. I would be shocked. And before the echo of those words had cleared the room, the announcement came out. So
too much bread.
It'll just be interesting to see what happens with we only got 2 weeks before the deal is up. So there's going to be some kind of big announcement in the next 2 weeks. It's either going to be PIF and PGA decide on a deal where the PIF is part of the PGA, which I would imagine would include the dismantling of Live Golf or the massive structural change so that they avoid all PGA weeks, or they're going to just go back to war and deal with the suits again, which the PGA had a problem with because again, you got 776 billion. You can, it's F around and find out money, when it comes to legal.
Bruh, they said Tony Finau may go too. So good for him and his family if he does get that money while he can.
I hope nobody does. But like I said, I think it's wrong, but I understand.
Man, if I get that kind of money,
out for me 600 million. I don't care how much I like them or don't like them. Like I would probably do it, and then try after that check cleared, and then say all the stuff to get me kicked out.
Oh
man, I'm making the coldest album ever. Every producer, every rapper I ever wanted is getting made. If I ever get that kind of money. Man. So sliding from that to the NFL. Brian, you kind of mentioned let's go over some NFL playoff scenarios and kind of how stuff's shaking out. I think the Niners have clinched the playoffs berth. I don't know if anyone else has yet. I've seen this
based off of Green Bay losing. That's it.
Yeah. So you got that, and then right now there's a flowing uh, a flowing array of teams right now, because the bottom 6 and 7 seeds right now are kind of up for grabs to a degree in both conferences. I saw earlier that 30 teams are still mathematically in contention for the playoffs. To your point earlier, Brian, before we got on the show, a lot of teams are, effectively out of it anyway. But, if you were to win out and a couple teams lose, anybody can get it, kind of thing. So, but to your point, B, let's kind of just talk about
real quick.
Yeah, do it.
So let's start with the AFC. So Baltimore has a greater than 99% chance of making the playoffs. Kansas City's 99%. Dolphins are 96%. Jaguars are 93%. And the Browns are 80%. So let's just call those 5 done, right? After that, it drops all the way down to Buffalo at 47%, Texans at 45%, Broncos at 45%, Colts at 40%, and Steelers at 32%. We don't need to go any deeper than that. And so there's 2 spots left available for one of those 5 teams: the Bills, the Texans, the Broncos, amazingly enough, the Colts, and the Steelers.
Yeah.
The Steelers have a pretty hard strength of schedule because they're in a really tough division. So I personally have mentally eliminated them. Josh Allen and the team has apparently figured out how to win games without Diggs. Since he was pouting, they just basically said, "Great, we'll go win without you." I mean, he's still playing games and playing okay, but he's not the focus anymore. And now the Bills might be the scariest first-round opponent in an AFC matchup because their record isn't great. They played really poorly at parts of the season, but they're starting to figure it out. Josh Allen is impossible to sack again, and they look like a team that's poised to make a run. And if you are Kansas City, who they just beat, or the Dolphins, you probably do not want to see the Bills in the first round, especially as a 6 or 7 seed.
Definitely.
But and as for the rest, the Texans, the Broncos, I don't have a strong opinion on who's going to make it. I don't know if you do, Jason. I would like to see the Texans because I think that's just a more interesting storyline.
Yeah, depends on strength of schedule. I think to your point earlier that you made about the Steelers. If Houston has a easier road than Broncos, I could see whoever has the lesser opponents, I think, has a better shot.
Well, when the AFC, the Steelers are the Raiders with a defense. They can't score points, so I don't have the Steelers in the playoffs.
The Raiders are the Raiders with a defense.
So it's like, they're not. I don't have them in the playoffs. I don't like their offense. The Colts I'm rooting for because I do like their coach, offense coordinator from Philadelphia, Shane Steichen. I think he's done a really good job with Gardner Minshew that Anthony Richardson went down. I would like to see them go just because. I would like to also see the Texans go as well. But it looks like just the Broncos, they look like they
have
might
a great
get in.
Schedule.
Yeah, the Broncos look like they're going to get in. So if I had to pick right now who would go those 6 and 7 seeds, I would say at this moment, I would take the Broncos and I would take the Bills, but I'm pulling for the Colts to get in one of those spots.
I would say pretty much the same thing. I think it would be the Bills, then the Broncos. I'm rooting for Houston because I think that storyline would be super interesting. And I don't have too much of a rooting interest otherwise.
Yeah,
but I do think the Broncos, who play the Lions, the Patriots, the Chargers without Herbert because he's out for the year, and the Raiders to finish off their season, which will probably be a very important game that has absolutely no value to the Raiders, other than possibly playing spoiler, will be. They've got to. I have to believe there's 3 wins out of those 4 games.
Yeah, all these other teams, I don't care what their record or chance is, they're eliminated. The Bengals, the Chargers, the Raiders, the Jets, and Titans, they're all eliminated. I don't care if they're mathematical
mentally
chances.
At least.
Yeah, those guys are gone. Right, not mathematically, but yeah, they're gone. And if we could jump over to the NFC,
real quick, Raiders have a better.
I'll run through the percentages on the NFC if you want.
Raiders have a better defense, yards per game than the Steelers. Yep.
And the Steelers.
Yeah.
So San Francisco's at a greater than 99% to make the playoffs. Philly's at greater than 99%. Matter of fact, San Francisco's at 100%. They've already clinched. At least a spot. Philly's at greater than 99%. The Dallas is at greater than 99%. Detroit is at 97%, so they've basically got it. The Vikings are at 67%. And then in order, you have Green Bay, who currently holds that 7th spot at 48%. Tampa Bay at 43%, the Saints at 40%, the Rams at 40%, and the Falcons at 36%. What is funny about that is that of those teams who are in the bottom 5 that I listed, one of them has to, because the top teams, none of them came from the NFC South, right? It was all other teams that have done it. So one of those teams from the NFC South is got to make it. So you have to figure.
Come on, Derek Carr, figure it out.
Yeah, so it's
Come on,
Carr.
DC.
It's right now I think it's Tampa Bay, but they only have a 3% better chance of making it. And so
now, you done ran out of
anyways,
scenarios, Brian. That Tampa Bay Buccaneers Green Bay Packers game on Sunday is a huge one. Huge.
Yeah.
That's a huge game. Yeah.
Well, the Green Bay game this past week, which they
Barely lost.
We'll talk about that in a minute. Was very important.
Yeah.
I mean, I was joking with all of you that the most important playoff scenario game was a game we watched in Las Vegas, and we'll talk about a little bit later. But that turned out to be the most important win from a playoff scenario part in all of the NFC.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just looking at all these 6 and 7 teams. I just don't think Seattle's going to get in. I don't have them in. I have the Giants
No,
out.
I don't even
Bears
have them in
out.
the playoff scenario, right?
Yeah.
They weren't even on the list.
Gino's hurt, right?
It doesn't matter whether he was hurt or not.
Gino's hurt, but he's not out for the year like Herbert or some of the other guys.
The Bears, Washington, and Arizona and Giants. I have them out. I actually have the Falcons out too. I don't think they're going to do it. So the only teams I have right now are the Saints, the Rams, Packers, and Vikings. That's who I think is going to get the final 2 spots. One of those 4 teams.
You were going with the Rams early.
Yeah, I'm still going with the Rams. I'm still gonna roll with them to get in. The thing about it, people were because of Jordan Love or because the Green Bay Packers are winning a couple games, everybody kind of jumped on the Packers schedule like they have gimme games. That's not the team that has gimme games. They're a young team. Giants are just not a good team. I was actually shocked that they actually lost the game. I didn't think they'll cover the 6-point spread, but I was actually shocked that they lost because the Packers just have better players than the New York Giants. Giants don't have, or they're just a bad team when they don't have a lot of good players. And that DeVito guy, I know he had a good drive, but I've seen him I've watched him a whole game. He's just really not that good. But the Packers still have a chance to get in.
Have a really easy schedule, to your point, right? They play the Buccaneers, which are a beatable team because they're in a division that's not owned by anyone. The Panthers, they have the Bears to finish the last game of the season, and they have the Vikings. There's 2 to 3 wins easily seeable in those 4 games. Which
they counted the Giants one too. They count the Giants as a winnable game too, and they lost. So I wouldn't trust the Packers like that. I'm not saying I'll be surprised if they won.
It's not a matter of trust. It's just a matter of the people they are playing are beatable. That's easy to see.
No, they're definitely
I'm not saying they are or they aren't. I'm just saying they are beatable teams. The Giants were also beatable. They didn't beat them. It happens.
Now, did you have the Vikings in the playoffs at the beginning of the season? I know you didn't have them win the division.
I didn't have them in the playoffs, but I put them as a 7th, and then almost immediately, after week 1 or week 2, and we said, hey, what kind of mistakes did we make? I said, I made a mistake in thinking the Vikings had even a snowball's chance, which is what I gave them earlier, and had them completely out by week 2. Right. So, you could count me as wrong on that one, because now they have a 67% chance winning that game this weekend, however ugly it was, puts a lot of distance between them and the other teams vying for the 7th spot.
Let me ask you guys this. Let's just say the Saints don't make the playoffs because only one team is getting in from that division. Let's just say they don't make it. Do they get it? Do they make a change at quarterback, or they keep Derek Carr? Because this is the most winnable division in NFL.
It is. I wish we were in that division. You got I think his contract hasn't playing I think it hasn't played in at least 2 years.
2? Okay. All right.
I think
it's all I don't remember. I remember we talked about it, but I don't remember exactly how it's structured. Yeah. But I think he had a few years at least of guaranteed money. And however long that is, not to mention they're going to be just good enough to be out of the conversation, although we're not talking about it yet.
Yep.
It's crazy to me that Penix didn't get a 1st-round draft grade. There is
some
team.
He's a 1st-round quarterback to you? Well, you know what? No.
Hell yes.
No, wait. No, let me let you go, and I'll go after you. Go ahead.
Yeah, but hell yes. But the reason I say that is there is a team, if they wanted, whether it's the Vikings, whoever it is, who's at the bottom of the 1st round, not top of the 1st round, but at the bottom of the 1st round, who could take a Penix and probably do well. Now, everyone tells me how old he is, but young quarterbacks don't play anyway. Like
Yeah, how
it
hurt he
doesn't
be.
happen like
Yeah.
that.
Okay.
But anyways, I absolutely think he's, and I think someone can find him at the end of the first round because he's not got a first round grade,
Right.
and maybe make something happen, or
Did we
top of the second round.
did we talk about the Heisman?
Yeah, we talked.
'Cause it just happened
We made our
it just
picks
happened
last
on
week,
Friday.
though.
Yeah, who got it?
Daniels from
Jordan Daniels.
LSU.
Got it.
And Jaden Daniels.
Yeah. So here's the thing about that. I don't consider Penix a first round pick, but as of recent picks like Mac Jones and all these other players who I think he's better than, Justin Fields, Mac Jones, and some other guys, Baker Mayfield, I think he's better than all those guys. So in the recent NFL, I would take Penix over all of them. But Penix is going to be like Lamar Jackson, meaning he can actually go to a team with some structure, a decent coach, and
That's
a decent roster around him. He won't be at the top of the first round if he gets drafted. He'll be at the bottom, and he could just sit for a year or two, and he won't probably really be needed until later in his career.
If you're Detroit, who's going to be 27th pick,
yeah,
27th pick as of right now,
yeah,
why wouldn't you take him to come after Goff?
Yep, definitely.
That's what I'm saying. Like, there's teams at the bottom of this thing that don't have their stuff established. If you're Pittsburgh at 23, Minnesota at 22, why not take him knowing that you're going to re-sign, in our case, re-sign Kirk Cousins for a couple more years, let him finish off his time and give Penix some time in the background.
Yeah,
right?
I initially disagreed with you, but when I think about these other quarterbacks, especially like Mac Jones, who's just not a first round talent, period. You got to believe he probably could get drafted in the first round. It's a high probability, maybe half.
And it's a great
50%.
situation to go to be the backup guy for a structured team.
Yeah.
And not be I really, 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 really like Caleb Williams. I think that he is a generational talent at quarterback. I think he will be unsuccessful if he goes to the Chicago Bears, because everyone is unsuccessful when they go to the Chicago Bears.
Yeah. And looking at Derek Carr's contract real quick, they're going to have to keep him because if they cut him, it's $52.8 million of dead cap money.
Yeah. Carr always plays better the second season.
Yeah,
also.
They're going to have to keep him.
So you got any other playoff talk for the NFL, or we want to go to this week?
We can go this week.
Well, I don't know if you said who you think the last spot. So do you think it's the
Rams
still?
Yeah, I got the Rams still in there.
At 7. Yeah. Vikings are going to be 6.
I got the Vikings and the Rams.
It's either going to be the Vikings or Detroit at 6, because they could possibly flip-flop with a good end of the season for the Vikings, but I don't think it'll happen. So 6, and then the only spot that's open is the last one, and it's either the Rams or the Packers. And I'll tell you what I didn't say in anything that we talked about, even when my most optimistic, 3 teams from the NFC North was an improbability, and a disgusting idea at the beginning of the season at any point in time up until like right now, where it's actually possible.
Yeah, it's possible.
If the Packers win those 3 games and lose to the Vikings, by example, they would get the 7th spot because they hold it now.
Well, what's on? That's it, GB.
Word.
That's it, man.
So let's go to this week. Coop, let's start with your team, man. You had a big win, and then me and B was at our game, so we could talk about that. What'd you see, man, from Glock Purdy and the boys?
When I saw the first quarter watching the first quarter, and I said this last week, I expected them to come out a little slow, not crisp, coming off that big emotional win at Philadelphia, because they've had that game they've been talking about that game since the schedule came out. So they put everything they had. They had to sort of, weather the storm in the, first quarter and a half against Seattle, which they did. It seemed like a game. I said, Brock Purdy's going to throw an interception this game because everybody's just not crisp, and he did throw a pick. But the team settled down like I thought they would. They started to, do their thing, and they could have scored 35, but Brandon Ayuk got stripped from behind while he was running downfield. So they won 28-16. Thankfully, Seattle covered my 13-point spread in the league, because I did take Seattle. I did not think the 49ers were going to win by that much, even though they had a chance to cover without that fumble. But to me, it was one of those business as usual games, Glenn. But the one thing that I think that can derail the 49ers is injuries. And we had players hurt. We had our starting linebacker, Greenlaw, hurt. His backup was hurt. Javon Hargrave, the guy we signed from Philadelphia, he got a hamstring injury. And then our best corner, Travaris Ward, who locked up DK Metcalf a couple of weeks ago, he had a growing issue. So, we got to see how 49ers. We don't have depth on the team, Glenn. We have no depth. So if our starters get hurt, it could be a wrap. So we got to see how these injuries shake out. Now, thankfully, we play Arizona next week. Hopefully these guys don't play, but I'm sure Shanahan is going to play them anyway. But because the thing is, we have home field advantage at stake if we win these next 4 games to get that bye. So I know they're going to try to win, but I expect it to be a low-scoring game against the Cardinals, like running a lot and doing short plays and everything, try to keep the defense off the field, and those injured guys, to kind of, not have play so many snaps on defense. But business as usual game, GB. It's not really much to say. Now, I think Brock Purdy threw for a career high 368 yards. Yeah. And then you still hear people say, he's a system quarterback, blah blah blah. But system quarterbacks don't chuck the ball downfield as much as he does. They throw short, and they throw short often. But the MVP talk, I'm not really into that. I don't care who wins MVP. I never have. I never will. But I will say this though. Dak Prescott looks like I'm not gonna go into it. I'll let Brian talk, but I think Dak Prescott is probably the leader right now because he's a quarterback for the Cowboys, and that carries a lot of weight. But anyway, B, did you watch any highlights of the 49ers game?
So I didn't get to watch any of that game. I was lucky to watch my own game with plays and all that stuff. But here's the one thing that I would say. I'm calling back to the conversation about the NFC playoffs. You're 100% right. You all really are trying to win every single game going out to try and get the number 1 seed. And you are the reason that I think the Rams will not make the playoffs and the Packers will, now that I've looked at schedules, is because you guys need that game against them at the end of the season.
Right.
Which would, under normal circumstances, be we'll put some guys in there for a quarter or whatever. You guys need that to get
They're going to go hard.
Which is a bye week, which means they are absolutely going to go at it, and the Rams can't compete with the San Francisco A game. So I think that game ultimately, no matter what, ends the ability.
That's a good point.
Because the Rams basically need to win out, and the Packers could still lose a game. That's a good point. I think that's the reason why the Rams won't make it in the Packers will. As far as the game, I didn't get to watch it. I do think that beating Drew Lock and the Seahawks by 12 points is not the stamp of excellence that it could otherwise be. But as you said, it's business as usual. Win the games, hopefully stay healthy, get to the playoffs, get a bye. Because if there's any one team who could really use a bye, it's San Francisco because of health. And the need for them to be healthy. And I would hate to see any team, my team might be it, but any team have to play in San Francisco after a bye week in the playoffs.
It's never turned out good, not for the past few years.
Yeah, that's just a very difficult game to even compete in, let alone win.
Yeah, I will say I think Brock is good. You can be good, and you can have a system that makes you better. The only reason I say that, because Brock is nice, and I think he'd be good on a myriad of teams. Like, we're seeing that. The thing about it is, after having and seeing Jimmy, like, really watching him, he went to a Super Bowl in that system. So there's some validity to that system being good, and anybody can make it work. But to that point, that boy Brock got an arm on him. His vision is good. He knows what he's doing. He know what he's doing.
No fear. No fear.
He gets his respect, but that system
a lot of guys, it's the
filthy,
fear that forces the mistake. You're right. They throw the pass even though they're afraid of the pass, and then they end up shorting it or whatever and throwing a pick.
Perfect segue.
Glenn, I figured it out real quick before we go to your guys' game. I figured out why I think Brock doesn't get props, and I think it's because these players were already established with the 49ers before. And so it's sort of like he's just a little bit enhancing them a little bit. So I think that's why. McCaffrey's already established. Debo's already established. Ayuk was getting established.
Kittle, so everybody.
Kittle was established, right? Whereas these other quarterbacks,
Williams,
these other guys, exactly. They weren't really established. They kind of came up with the quarterback.
Correct.
So I think that's it. But I didn't want to take away.
And because Jimmy Garoppolo was able to win with those guys,
that's it.
Now there's no argument that he's better than Jimmy Garoppolo. That's
by far
very clear. Right. I think Glenn would agree with that.
Everyone, anyone with eyes or ears that's heard a game.
But the reality is, because all those players were established and because they were very successful with someone else, it's just harder. So I never have knocked to say that he's bad. I've always said I just don't think he's great.
Right.
And I think that.
No, he's good.
Yeah. would
That's good.
you know?
I would take
I
him.
think we talked about it mid-season when Cousins was still kind of breaking records on a week basis and looking like an MVP candidate at that point in time. You asked me if I wanted Purdy or Cousins, and I still said Cousins, and I still think that's the case. So, like I said, he's good. He's just not
right.
Further segue, either of our teams would have taken Brock Purdy in a millisecond, bro. I will say that
I think Brock Purdy would have had, while he would have had more than 6 yards going into the fourth quarter of passing yards, which is what the Vikings had. I don't know that he would have made this game any more interesting. It was
he would have,
bro. People could catch.
They had that was, I will say, the most fun I've ever had at a loss. The Vegas experience is fun. Even this was my first time, Coop, where it was like when I went to the Colts game, it was probably 50-50. We went to the Chargers game, it was more Raiders. This is my third game, and it was very much way more Vikings. Had to be 70%. Had to be 70%.
A lot of purple.
A lot of purple. I was hearing a lot of like, oh, the food's better at US Bank, et cetera, stuff like that, which is cool. I had one guy walk past me like, yo, is this a home game for y'all? Which I was like, and I was like, I feel you. I mean, but I think one thing before we really get into the game thing, and I was telling Brian this, is like my tune has kind of changed on, before I was like, I always want a home field advantage, right? And the real talk of it is I used to go to 4 or 5 games a year in Oakland. Oakland, although the stadium was old, the fans in Oakland, the vibe in Oakland was different. Everyone wants to play it as this super violent and scary. Okay, fine. But it's not, I've sent y'all clips of Dallas fights and Niner fights, like drunk people fight. So it's not like it was just a Raider thing. However, Oakland was not a destination. So you had Raider fans there. People would come in from the other teams, but you never got a huge influx. Very rarely.
It was really home field advantage. Yeah.
100%, right? We're loud, black hole, et cetera. Now, to Brian's point, exactly, destination. I don't know if, and I'm trying to think of other stadiums, and I can't think of one.
Dallas is like that. A lot of home fans, other team fans.
No, I agree with that, but I'm saying the destination aspect of it. SoFi, yes, but you're in Inglewood. If you want to do something after, you still need to get out and travel to other parts of LA. Yeah. In Vegas,
people still think it was Los Angeles, but I agree. Correct. Vegas is better.
Correct. There's a bigger Vegas, just it being there, right? Like me, Brian, and I. Shout out to Mom. Shout out to Caressa. Shout out to Dre. We walked from the stadium to the casino, had a nice steak dinner. We caught a cab. We went to the airport. That's not happening in most of these places where you have an aspect. I could have gambled. We could have like you're just seeing sports fans everywhere. The way they built it and what that's created now. I was telling Brian as I'm looking around, what other team that's playing like the Raiders has this kind of engagement at the stadium? Now they might have all been purple, but that stadium, I was telling Brian, we're looking up to the very, very top. There are filled seats, and this is one of the highest ticket prices in the league. We paid, I think me and Brian were saying something like a few $100 per point.
Oh, it was $680 per point.
Per point. And my team didn't even score.
It's $5.25 per ticket, but yeah.
Right. So that's not floss or anything. It's I appreciate the blessing I had. I've had no money. I have a little bit of money now. I'm just saying that's what it was.
That was the family experience.
And as I'm sitting there, like watching all these fans in there, the Vikings fans are just as nervous as us. We're talking like, hey, we don't know what's going to happen. It's just back and forth slow. But I was seeing like, man, all this money, every ticket show that everybody buys, every hotel room you got goes to funding that stadium and future expansion for the Raiders, which is funny. So to that degree, Coop, I was thinking like, yeah, it's not a home field advantage, but basically you're using the other team's fans to fund your experience while your team's still bad, right? Because we're not, I think the defenses showed that they can play, and they had 5 sacks and they were all over. They got Dobbs benched throughout the end of the game, but the offense completely dead. So if you could figure out, I think next we got to get a quarterback. I'm not saying Aiden O'Connell can't be someone viable in the future. Point is, he was never supposed to be playing this early. He's a 4th round rookie quarterback that was supposed to be sitting and learning, and possibly the guy in the future. He's obviously smart. He has the arm, but he's not supposed to be in these moments yet. He's gun shy still. Everything Brian was just saying about the fearlessness, that was what Aiden was. He's thinking, and you don't have that kind of time in the league. You got to get the ball out. So that's what I noticed. And it was just back and forth nothingness, but it was fun in that it's still close. Even though it's 0, you're screaming and on third downs and fourth downs and hoping for the best because your team might win. So to that point, I mean, we met the homies there, Brian's homeboy, Eric, right?
Yeah.
Eric up there, bro, his brother, taking pictures out by the Al Davis, the Torch Bar, had some of Charles Woodson's whiskey. I'm looking at the Vegas skyline out the window, the views. It's like a great experience, even though we lost. Like it was just fun the whole time around, and I was happy to be there.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
that's cool.
I mean, look, obviously, this was a wonderful day and a horrible game. Like, I had to get there. I got there pretty late and was ice skating through the airport and all that other good stuff. But I had a blast of a time. That was hanging out obviously with them. The Vikings fans, which I think Glenn would say are just super polite.
On average, everybody was.
They're conversational.
One jerk, but that's natural.
Yeah, I was sitting next to the season ticket owners who own the seats to the left of us, and they were obviously big Raider fans. We were talking about it and the scenarios, and he actually is like, "Hey, it was so nice to be sitting next to all of you guys in the seats. You never know what you're going to get when someone else is buying someone else's seats." And we talked about the math, and the thing that was crazy is, so we were in seats that had a $125 face value, like not crazy expensive, but the people had to pay $24,000 for the PSL per seat.
Damn.
So they were $100,000 in the hole before they had the opportunity to buy them.
Damn.
So obviously they're trying to change the math on the recovery of that from 20 years to probably 10 or less to try and kind of get there. And so the tickets were expensive, but it may have turned out to be the most expensive cover charge to a sports bar ever. Because it was sports on in the background while we were having some beers and a good time. But it was awesome. Here's what I will tell you. I got lucky enough to get dropped off in front of the stadium, which they say they can never do, but because I was going there after the game started, they didn't care. Beyond that, the throng of people, which are forced to walk backwards and forwards and around to get to the bridge and then across the bridge, dumps every single person into the lap of the Mandalay Bay and Delano.
Correct.
Like, you have no choice. You can walk further and get to the Luxor, but you walk into
exactly
the
what we
lap
did.
of Mandalay Bay. And so we found a restaurant in the Mandalay Bay. We did. The rest of my evening was spent in the Mandalay Bay and Delano. That is the best deal in the world.
Absolutely.
You have the entire stadium walking through your food court, walking through by your shows, walking by your restaurants, walking by your casino tables. There was not a table there, I don't care what you were playing, that was under $25. And that was because they can get so many people that they can now say, we only want the big spenders. All the rest of you, there's a Luxor across the street. And I mean, the Mandalay Bay, I'm sure, structured, had some idea, some engagement to make sure it got structured.
100%. The money's crazy. Like how much money you're going to see.
Insane.
And all I kept hearing was people who are there from out of town, right? You have people live there, but everyone's from out of town pretty much. And I'm hearing, oh, we're only here for one more night. We might as well. And you're just cashing out because you're going to be there anyway. Like for Vegas, this is brilliant. You have the games only every so often. It's an event. It's on a weekend. Like I just don't see when they first were moving. I was saying to you guys, I think it's going to be tough when the Raiders, in a few years, if they aren't good, how are you going to sell out? Completely change my tune. That's not going to be an issue. You're going to have for years teams' first game ever in Vegas. The Buccaneers haven't been there with fans. I don't think the Saints have been there with fans. We played the Jets we played the Jets here, but there's a whole slew of teams that have never played in Vegas yet. And on those first games, I'm expecting every single time it to be full of those rival fans because it's your chance to go to Vegas. You're going to have that situation for years to come. And then
it's printing money for every single organization associated with it, including season ticket holders.
Absolutely.
Because like I said, they had to put 100,000 in, but they're getting 1,000 a week or approximately on those 4 tickets. And the folks that we bought the tickets from lived in Toronto and go to 2 to 3 games a year. Like I got all the info when I was talking to the other.
That's what you saw next.
It's brilliant. It was actually a money-making strategy beyond 10 years, and they effectively pay for their season tickets every single year.
Yeah.
They get to go see 3 games for free.
For free. It's ridiculous. It's so much fun. It was great. I had a great time with you, B, Mom, Lil. That was fantastic. It was literally like the game was secondary, which is crazy because you know how insane I am about the Raiders. But
And
yeah.
I never knew what pork belly fried rice was before. I mean, I know
That's
what pork
hella
belly fried
funny.
rice was,
It was
but
fire.
it was so good.
It was
That's
fire.
hella
So
funny.
good.
It was fire.
So good.
Yeah, it was fire.
That's funny.
So yeah, it was great.
Anyways,
I have
So,
to
yeah.
admit,
we didn't talk much about the football game because the football game was not much
There's
to talk
nothing to
about.
talk about.
oh yeah,
Yeah, it was a 3-0 game that was dull. Just because the teams you get excited about a big play where someone was wide open and they would just simply drop the ball. Both directions, just drop the ball.
Yeah, it wasn't good.
It wasn't, Dobbs did not play well, but the wide receivers did him no favors.
Yeah.
Competent Justin Jefferson had drops. He got hurt. Thankfully, he's going to be okay.
Yep.
Hawkinson was dropping balls. Addison was dropping balls. Osborne, like everybody could not catch. Brandon Powell got hurt, but no one could catch.
We were right at the end zone. We're on 20 rows up, right at the end zone line. That grass was pristine, boy. I mean, that paint was black, boy.
The only time anyone ran into the end zone was kind of the joke where one of the defensive players after the play was over, went over and he went to the line and basically stopped. He didn't even go in the end zone. There were no footprints unless the band, which there was not. But I'm just saying, unless the band made it, there was no footprints.
Team intros. What were you going to say, Coop?
No, I was going to say that. So I think now the game was going at the same time as you guys' game, and so I was checking the scores. So we all thought I was a ref basketball. We all thought that our phone apps was messed up because there was no score of the game, and that was like because it was fourth quarter 0-0. And I'm saying, I'm like,
6 yards of passing by then.
But see, I didn't bother to look at stats. I just thought the phone was messed up because I'm thinking there's no way in hell this game could be 0-0 with 9:03 left in the fourth quarter.
There was a second.
Jason, you would have been more confused if you looked at the stats and saw Dobbs with 6 yards of passing in the fourth quarter. You'd be like, oh yeah, it's definitely broke.
We thought it was going to go to a 0-0 tie. Yeah. That would at least been a record.
Yeah, but I just thought my phone. We all thought our phones were messed up. I'm like, man, it's something wrong with the apps because it's 0-0. It's like your phone still says 0-0. I was like, yeah, it's in the fourth quarter. I'm like, man, I don't know what's going on. And then we found out later, and it said final 3-0, and then we just all laughed like, oh wow, that was really the score of the game.
It was loud. Third downs, both teams were cheering. You're cheering for your team. Like it was a real game. There was no scoring. We could not, and we're looking at each other, Vikings fan, Raider fan alike, like. Bro, I'll put it like this, and this is the last thing I'm going to say.
At its best.
Because we need to wrap this up and get to the other games we're going to do. We got 10 minutes. As you're leaving, Coop, you just lost a home game. There's full of Vikings fans. I heard a couple skull chants, but people was quiet. They looking over like, hey, man, I don't know, bro. Like, it was one of those. They was like, I guess somebody had to win. Somebody had to win. Like, it was nobody talking nothing.
My last point, I thought of both of you. Brian, I was thinking Brian was probably thinking, well, hell, it wins a win. Helps us win the playoffs. Yeah. And then I thought of you, Glenn, when I was like, damn, Glenn has bad luck with Nick Mullins because the game we went to the last 49er Raider game, Nick Mullins was a quarterback on the point. I was like, I think he has bad luck when Nick Mullins.
He was signed to the Raiders too for a little bit. Last year.
Okay.
He was on the Raiders for a little bit. Hey man, it is what it is, bro. The end result, I was seeing wins and all that. Football's great. No, this is wonderful. We love sport, but I'm just watching just money trees everywhere. Every bar is full. Just every seat is full. The team store was full.
Were stupid though.
I mean, come on, man. It was insane. So. All right, so that was that, man. It was most fun. I'm so glad we went. Happy birthday, Mom. Mom's birthday is the 16th. So we had that. Let's go through a couple more games and do our last two segments to try and get up out of here before it gets too late. All right, so.
What time is it right now so the listeners know what time we're recording, GB?
You got 10 minutes. It's 10:30 right now, 10:30 p.m. PST. So let's throw a couple of games. I think that Rams-Ravens, just because of how the game ended, and actually those are both playoff teams.
Yeah, the Rams, I watched that game, actually. The Rams sort of blew it because Lamar was catching Odell and I think the other wide receiver with deep shots, and they were 5-10 yards, behind the DBs of the Rams. I don't know what the hell they were doing. The Rams should have won that game, but they blew it with bad and busted coverages in the back end. But, good win for Baltimore. They're the number one seed right now, but the Rams should have won that game if you had watched it. They should have won.
B?
Oh, didn't see it. So
didn't see it.
I agree. The Ravens needed to win that game. They did. The Rams needed to win that game. They didn't.
Yep.
Ultimately, that could be the difference between the Ravens and President.
So looking at this one was interesting to me. The Bears beat the Lions. Lions are kind of dropping games they don't need to be dropping. Going to the
Yeah,
playoffs.
I had the Bears +3 in that game. I just don't like the way the Lions have been playing, man. I just think they've covered their defense has just been getting torched. They've had some bad losses.
And Justin
then
Fields is your favorite quarterback.
shit. And then Detroit is playing Detroit's playing outdoors in 39-degree weather. I took the Bears +3. I saw that was what Bears +3. A lot of people want to jump on the line, say it was only 3 points. I'm like, have you seen the way the Lions have played? They're not worth that. They shouldn't be giving any points. And Bears won that game. Good for them.
There they go. What about the Bills and the Chiefs, man?
You watched that game, B?
So I watched a little bit that I could because I couldn't watch much of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was little bits and pieces. The only thing I'm going to say is, and I saw the Mahomes temper tantrum, and look, the Chiefs. What goes around, it's karma, man. They've won a lot of games because the refs have been favorable to them. That comes around. Just like the Vikings won all of their one-score games last year inexplicably, and this year they were losing all of their one-score games inexplicably. Things just kind of even themselves a little bit out. But I do think the Bills are starting to look like a real team again after a middle of the season where they just looked completely discombobulated. They're getting it together at the right time. And this could lead to a playoff run. I don't think they're great, but I do think that they're a scary team to play in the first round.
Yeah, I don't feel any sympathy for Kansas City. They've gotten the benefit of a lot of calls, especially in that Super Bowl against the Niners. If you see some of those replays, there should have been some obvious calls that weren't made. Not saying that's the reason we lost, but they were obvious calls.
They got a first down on a goal line look last year because the Bradbury had one tug on a jersey at the end of the game.
Yeah, I mean they've gotten the benefit of a lot, so I do not feel sorry. And the guy was on the defensive line side, so I don't even want to hear it. He was a defensive lineman for the other team. He was lined up.
Well, so they showed something that he had lined up in that exact same spot 3 other times in the game with no call.
Yeah,
and it's like, okay, but was he offsides? Yes.
Right.
Yeah, what about okay, so Cowboys destroy the Eagles.
Thank you. I was a Cowboy fan for 3 hours, and like the Eagles are. What was crazy about that game is I was gonna see if Dallas did the same thing the 49ers did, attack the middle of the field, and that's exactly what they did. They just attacked the middle of the field and just destroyed.
People say they're back in it. Packers.
But the Eagles have literally the biggest joke of the finish the season of a schedule, right? Seahawks with that's all injured. The Giants twice. And the Cardinals.
Yeah, exactly.
And the Cardinals.
Lovely. So the 49ers have to win. Exactly.
Perfect. Giants. So the 2 Monday night games, I think actually ended up being pretty good. Giants, Packers ended up being a heck of an ending. And Jordan Love has not been playing bad.
I would love for us to talk about whether or not this Monday night doubleheader thing makes sense. I mean, you already get the highest viewership of the week on Monday nights, and all you do is split the viewership. Like, you're not going to be able to get much more viewership from people watching both games. Not everyone has that opportunity. I just don't understand why you try to mess with perfection, which is the loyal Monday night fandom. I missed the Manning cast, which it was supposed to be pretty interesting because they had Kirk Cousins on there for both games, talking about both games. But as far as the games go, both games were good, and I did get to watch both of them, and they were both really, really competitive games all the way down.
Rookie quarterbacks. I didn't want Will Levis, and now I'm like, dang, I wish we had him.
Good.
Really wish we had him now. I didn't want him during the draft. Now I'm like, damn.
Yeah, I don't know. You might want to wait till next season on that one. But this game proves why I never picked Miami to actually make deep Super Bowl runs, is because of games like this. Tennessee is not a good team at all. Not at all.
13 points in 30 seconds.
Right, exactly.
Minutes?
2 touchdowns in like 3 minutes. Yeah. And then the Giants suck. They're just not a good team. The Giants might not win the game for the rest of the season. That's how bad they are.
Their own players were saying it's a good thing we're ass. Like,
but they ended up beating Green Bay. I guess that helps you out, Brian. I'm sure you're happy about that one.
That's why I said the biggest win for playoff implications was the 3-0 game in Las Vegas.
Yeah. So I didn't
Detroit lost.
I didn't think Green Bay would lose, so I never was thinking about playoff scenarios for the 49ers. But somebody said, "Oh yeah, the Green Bay lost, 49ers are in." I'm like, "Oh, okay. Well, I guess it happened." So, but whatever. Yeah.
Weren't. So that's that. Always a pleasure, guys. Let's try and we actually might make it. Last few minutes of the show. What's Brian started this a while ago saying something was a bunch of hogwash. We made it a weekly segment. This week's segment for hogwash for me is the Raiders offense. And I don't need to say much more. You guys go ahead.
Yeah, I'm gonna take a cue from you guys. The NFL refs, y'all gonna have to do better. I'm sorry, you can't be having cats lining up in the damn near the linebacking core and defensive line the other team, and then not calling nothing, and then all of a sudden want to call it in the game. You might as well. That's like 3 seconds in the key. You might as well just let that go. You ain't called it all game. So
Right.
yeah, I and you gotta do better. I'm not saying each referee has to call the game the same, but I mean at least call the obvious ones, the obvious things that you see. At least call that. I've never made a rant about refs ever, but I have to say something right now. It's getting kind of ridiculous.
Nope.
Yeah, I'm just going to go back real quickly and just point out again that the idea of a doubleheader for Monday Night Football is ridiculous. It's really, really silly to mess with perfection. You have a captured audience of people who will watch any Monday Night Football game. They tend to be better matchups because they schedule better games than they do for Thursday night. If you want to hedge your bet, give us 2 Thursday night games because one of those games might actually be decent. Most of them suck. But these 2 Monday night games, trying to divide the attention, this is a perfect example of why it doesn't make sense. Because there weren't a lot of good football games this week. There were a few. There weren't a lot of good football games. And one of them got lost in the shuffle on Monday night. But, this doesn't make sense. Sometimes you tinker with things to see how it works. This is the second year they've tried this. It's about time for them to figure out it doesn't.
Yeah, I agree. That makes no sense to have 2 Monday night games.
Real quick, guys, before we segment real fast, NBA in-season tournament. We didn't.
Okay, I was going to say I'll save it for later. The Lakers won. We all thought that they would. They played great basketball for the last 2 games in Las Vegas. They won. I do not care about all these people who want to talk about LeBron James got this call, that call, blah, 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 blah. They were kicking teams' butts. They were winning by
historic numbers.
Yeah, they were winning by massive numbers. They played great basketball. This, of course, tells all the Laker fans that if they focus, concentrate, and most importantly, play defense, now that they've gotten their defensive guys like Vanderbilt and Cam back, they could be a very good team. I mean, they're 2 games out of first place. That's not to say that I think that they're the best team in the NBA or even the West. They're not, but when they focus, can be a very, very good team. As evidence, they can also decide they lost by 2 points to Dallas tonight because they kind of took their foot off the pedal and probably laying in the glove. But congratulations to them for winning the in-season tournament. The in-season tournament, by every account, if you look at ESPN, they had an article talking about what does the NBA do with this resounding success of the in-season tournament. You asked Silver, he was talking about resounding success and talked about how he's going to tweak it. And if you ask the players, they thought it was a success. The only people who have said that it was bad was people who were complaining about LeBron getting calls. That just proves that people were invested in the game because they were worried about LeBron getting calls in a game in December. I mean, most people never would even watch the games to know whether or not LeBron got calls or not.
All them boys got 500,000. LeBron had them locked in. He said from the beginning, wanted to get everybody paid. I loved it. Coop, what you think?
I didn't watch the game. I don't really have an opinion, like good or bad.
Them boys. It was never close.
Yeah, I saw the score. I saw the point spread too. I think it was only Lakers -2.
It was worse than the score looked. I'll put it like that. They was never close. AD was unstoppable.
Yeah, I think though one thing about the in-season tournament is you can kind of manipulate the schedule, who teams play what teams. The Lakers really didn't play too many good teams in this in-season tournament, but they still won the games that they needed to win. And they ended up winning the whole. They never lost, and they ended up winning the whole thing. So good for them. Now, do I think they're a championship team? No, but this is a good.
The brackets are established at random, though. So
yeah. I mean,
you can kind of It's
and
just what
you can't
is.
tell who's good this early in the season anyway. That's kind of I think the point of the whole thing.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you can't really tell who's good, but you can definitely tell who's bad, though. But you definitely can't tell who's good. I will admit that.
Yeah.
But
I'm just saying, randomly selecting, you don't know when you match them up that early in the season who's going to be what.
The thing about though, Brian, real quick, because I don't want to stay on too long. Do you think it means anything, or it will predict playoff success because they won the in-season tournament?
No.
Okay.
No, right. Absolutely not. Well, I think it'll tell us as Laker fans what I was saying earlier. The Lakers are good when they focus, and they have the ability to focus because they were a play-in team last year. They went to the Western Conference Finals, so there's reason to believe that they can capitalize off of that. They're not going to be good every night because they're old and they don't have the ability to stay focused like that. But when they dial in, they can go undefeated for 8 games
A little
over the
bit.
course of a
They
couple
tough,
weeks.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, check around 22nd. 80 will be hurt by then. Okay, go ahead.
I think, and it was smart for LeBron to me because he didn't got too many more years left in the league, so he made sure he got one of those in-season
right.
tournaments, championships on his record. That's smart. Last segment, minute to win it. I'm just gonna use everything we said before. Happy birthday, Mom. Had a good time with everybody at the game, and that's it. Y'all go ahead.
Yeah, I'm gonna say the same thing. Happy birthday to our biggest fan of the show. She's watched
Love you.
every single episode. Love you, Tosh,
Everyone.
for real, no doubt.
Yeah, I can't say
That's
anything
it.
that hasn't already been said before, but happy birthday, Tosh. Also happy birthday to my dad. It's his actual birthday today.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, but anyways, no, and then, you know, what sports has always been about for me is watching the games with friends and family. There's nothing better than what I got to do this weekend. So
100%.
thanks to everybody. Also, shout out to the dumb luck that they had an advertising campaign going on at the stadium for Boyd. So
Boyd
all
Casinos.
of the towels, Boyd Casinos. So all the towels showed the Raiders and had in large block letters Boyd on it while we were there this week, and they were giving out the towels with that. You can't get, you know, it was meant to happen that way. We were meant to be there.
Yeah.
And I mean, not
Pops
2
was
weeks
with us.
ago, we were like, nah, let's not do it. And then Glenn was like, no, let's do it. And we did it. And it was so much fun. And you know, a good football game would have been nice, but all the other things were perfect.
What's the and tell the fans the significance of Boyd.
Yeah, that's our last name. That's my last name. And my mom got a memorial brick for my dad at the stadium. So if you're ever at the stadium in front of the team store, there's a brick for my dad representing him in memoriam. And then right there, we got his last name all over everything the whole time.
Every time out, Boyd was up in bold, and we got an extra one for Lance somewhere.
Yep, I got it.
So
I'll take it to him this week.
Yeah, so it was just awesome that everything kind of felt. So anyways, that's how I wanted to end the show, just talking about
Perfectly said. We'll catch y'all next week, man. The Sports Counterpoints. Thank y'all for listening. Peace.